We're at 50 million in revenue. So the next big goal is for us to get to 100 million. So we set our goals to basically double our revenue every 3 years. I think we were around 4 or 5 million around 2014. And I had a lot of doubts in myself at the time, like, okay, I got to this point. Can I even run a $10 million company? Can I run a $20 million company? Like, is that possible? Like, to think it's $50 million is like insane for me. It's like mind blowing for me. Setting my sights on like, all right, what do we have to do? Got me thinking in a different way. If I had to double my revenue, I couldn't do the same things I was doing before because that only got me to a certain point. I had to start thinking bigger.
You're listening to the MSP Success My First Million podcast. I'm your host, Rob Patterson. Today, I'm talking with Tom Andrulis, CEO of Intelligent Technical Solutions. Founded in 2003, headquartered in Las Vegas, Nevada, with a presence in 11 U.S. cities, ITS's mission is to help businesses thrive by managing technology. Tom, it's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So can you start us out by giving our listeners a sense of the size of your organization, see revenue, headcount, customer base?
Yeah, and actually, just listen to your intro. We had a couple more locations. So now we're up to 13 different locations, 13 cities across the U.S., about 360 team members worldwide. About half of them are inside the U.S. and half of them are outside the U.S. As far as like revenue is concerned, we're doing about $50 million a year in revenue. So a lot of that's comprised of just, kind of bread and butter MSP services, then cybersecurity services, compliance, cloud, those sort of things, along with hardware sales as well.
Yeah, that's fantastic. $50 million in revenue. I mean, we've got statistics out there that, our sister company, Technology Marketing Toolkit, we just got done with our boot camp. Robin Robbins was on stage there. And it's just a very small percentage that even get to the $10 million mark. So it's $50 million is an amazing accomplishment.
Yeah, thank you.
So I was doing some research on the company, and it looked like, and I would break it down in this way, it looked like you had 3 phases of development. Your first 10 years, that first decade, I think you maybe kind of figuring out the landscape, and then you had the 5 or 6 year period where you really started to find the traction and grow, and then post 2018, it seems like more like a rocket ship. Can you talk to us about how you got started in this whole business to begin with, and some kind of insight to those periods?
Sure. Yeah, I actually like the way you broke it down because I never really thought of it that way. Kind of like the first decade of trying to figure it out, then kind of building the foundation, then scaling. So if I went back to the beginning before 2003, I used to work for Electronic Arts, and actually more specifically Westwood Studios. They had a video game development studio here in Las Vegas. So I worked for them for a few years. EA bought Westwood, worked under EA. So I think I was there for about 7 years collectively. Then EA decided to close that studio and move everybody to LA. And not being from LA, I said, hey, I don't want to go. They said, great, here's your severance and good luck. At that point, I was just trying to figure things out. So kind of fumbled along, and then eventually, came into a few of my friends that had some clients that they were trying to help with IT services. They couldn't fix the issues. We went out there and fixed everything. And when I started doing that work for small businesses around Las Vegas, I just knew, like, this is what I'm meant to do. Like, I love technology. I love helping people. And a lot of the small businesses, the challenges they had were things that we solved easily at Electronic Arts. So that's when I started Intelligent Technical Solutions back in 2003. And, I would say that I knew enough as a, engineer, technical person, but I didn't know anything about sales or marketing or HR or accounting, anything really. So, as you're describing the first 10 years of figuring it out, that's literally what it was. It was just me fumbling around, trying to figure things out. Before I actually won the Better Your Best contest in 2014, I had a really bad year in 2012 where we lost half of our clients in 2 months. Oh, wow. And then I had to lay off half my staff in the same time period, and really had to build back up from there. And, figured it out, had a banner, 2013, went on to tell a story in 2014 at boot camp, and, ended up winning the car, thankfully. So from there, it was really the next phase of the business, as you were describing, the next 5 years was really just building up my leadership team and making sure the foundation was sound. And once we built the leadership team, we were ready to go into some kind of expansion mode. And I didn't really know what it was at the time. I read this book called Double Double, which I highly recommend. The gist of the book is if you can grow 25% year over year over year, 3 years in a row, you essentially will double your revenue. I thought, okay, that doesn't seem that hard. Like, how hard could it be, right? So we set our goals to basically double our revenue every 3 years. And at the time, I didn't know how we were going to get from, I think we were around 4 or 5 million around 2013, 14, somewhere around there. It was like, how are we going to get to, 10 million, or how are we going to get to 20 million? And I had a lot of doubts in myself at the time. Like, okay, I got to this point. Can I even run a $10 million company? Can I run a $20 million company? Like, is that possible? To think it's $50 million is like insane for me. It's like mind blowing for me. But, just along the way, just keep learning. And, kind of setting my sights on like, all right, what do we have to do? Got me thinking in a different way. Because if I had to double my revenue, I had to start thinking, well, I couldn't do the same things I was doing before, because that only got me to a certain point. I had to start thinking bigger. And it seemed like doing some partnerships or some M&A or something where we're bringing companies together was probably going to be the fastest way to get there. And so I had a friend of mine that was in a peer group back in 2016 that said, hey, is there some way we can partner up? And we said, all right, maybe there's a way. We figured out the way, partnered up, ran together for 2017, realized it was really working. And I thought, okay, this is really what we're going to do. So in 2018, we started adding on more and more IT companies into, the larger ITS at the time. And that really took off, got to a point where we were able to like bring on company after company up until about 2022, where I think we brought on 8 companies at that point, 8 companies together. And private equity was, I'm sure private equity reaches out to everybody. I mean, everybody gets emails and phone calls and all this stuff, right? So we thought, hey, maybe there's this way we can, really go to the next level. And, at that time, we tried to figure out who's the right private equity company to go with. Eventually found one that was really good for our culture, like really good culture fit. I mean, there's a wide variety of people out there, wide variety of private equity companies as well. And decided, all right, we're gonna partner up with Tower Arch Capital. So that happened 2022, and from that point, they really helped us, backed us financially to go buy more IT companies, bring them into the fold, and we were able to expand from 8, kind of M&A transactions up to another 10, so 18 total. From if I went back to like 2016 to now, it's like a total of 18 transactions, which. Looking back, it sounds like a lot, and it is, right? It's a lot of it was a lot of chaos. A lot of companies try to integrate. We have a lot of owners that are still on board. Most of the people rolled equity with us, so we're all kind of in this team together, and we're really trying to get to the next level from here on out.
Yeah, that's an incredible journey. I mean, so I'm just trying to break down some of the dollars in there. So, would you say you were at like maybe 5 or so million before you feel like you got that leadership team together that could get you to that place? Now you can start acquiring.
Yeah,
that's around the number. And how was your profitability at that time? Decent, or were you kind of hiring ahead with that leadership team to where your EBITDA was affected? Or actually, beyond that question, how have you held the line on profitability throughout that growth?
Yeah, so I think there's levels to business, right? It's like when we first start the business, we're trying to figure out, how do I get clients? I'll take anything. I just need revenue. I need something. And then for me, it was all about building consistent revenue. So how do I get consistent revenue? Then you get to $1 million. You're like, okay, I kind of figured out how to do some sales and marketing maybe to get me then to like the $2.5, $3 million mark. At that point, then I felt that the leadership team needed to start getting built out because I couldn't do everything myself. So then it was a matter of investing in people and really like fumbling around, making a lot of mistakes, gaining a lot of experience through that to get to 5 million. And at 5 million, I don't see a lot of IT companies that get past 5 million without 2 or 3 or 4 key people on their leadership team. That's super important because it just gets to be too much for one person to handle. So yeah, was that helpful?
Yeah, no, for sure. Because I think there's different valleys of death as far as I understand it. But for sure, one of those is somewhere between the 2.5, 3 to get to that 5 to break through past 5. And I think a lot of the listeners here, a lot of the people that I coach are in that universe, and they are stuck because they've kind of shot from the hip to get there, and maybe they don't have all the processes in place, they don't have all the leaders in place, and they really struggle or wonder, like, how do I go about finding those people to put in place that can help take me across that valley and beyond. So in that way, how did you do that? Like, who were those kind of people that you tapped, or what was your process to get that going?
So I got to a point. This is when in 2013 we grew more than 100% in 1 year. And as we were growing really quickly, I realized I had to bring people on, and it's tough to find people in general. And my process back then was pretty non-existent. It was bad, right? Like, it was like, you put an ad out and then you get a lot of resumes and kind of sifting through resumes. And I thought at the time, I was like, oh my gosh, like, I need a way to just streamline this. Like, this has got to be much faster and take way less of my time. So I looked for different platforms where people could basically fill out an application, then go through a series of tests. And then when I get the test results, I could tell right off the bat, is this person going to work out or are they not? And I got to that point, kind of testing different platforms. And actually, there was a guy in one of my peer groups that had an idea where he said he took the state of California 8th grade math test. He's like, it's 50 questions. He's like, I only take the first 10. I would give it to people, have them fill out the first 10 questions, and then I could tell were they, intelligent enough to like do this job. I thought that was interesting. Like, let me just give the first 10 questions to people in my company. I think I had maybe, 7 people at the time, right? And I knew the people that were really good and really smart. And I knew the people that were like, I don't know about you, right? So everybody took the test, and sure enough, the people that were really intelligent that I was like, oh, these guys are quality, they're getting 9 and 10 out of 10. And these are not hard questions. There's no algebra. They're really, really straightforward. And everybody else that I thought was a little bit, sketchy, they basically failed it miserably. They're all under 5 out of 10 correct.
Wow.
And I thought, okay. So I started using this paper copy, and, that was okay, but it was kind of weird. Someone would come in my office and I give them this paper test and they fill out the test, right? I was like, okay, this is still wasting too much time, even though I could tell if they're going to be good or not. So I found an online platform that kind of did the same thing. It would say, all right, here's 50 questions that are kind of written in math based. Here's a typing test because we want people to fill out their time entries, quickly. Here's one that's more cognitive, where it's not like right or wrong. It's just like, how well does your memory work? Can you identify certain things on the screen? And through that, I was able to just identify people real quick, just kind of sift through a haystack to find the needles that I was looking for that really helped me find quality candidates that then I could go to the next level and have conversations with, and deeper conversations as well. So I think having a platform where you can just, evaluate people very quickly is helpful. We use DISC as well quite a bit. I'm a big believer in DISC. It helps kind of like see through. It's like almost X-ray vision into someone's behavioral style or personality style. Those are super useful tools for helping to find the right people. I also want to go back to your question too about finances and like, how do we run the company and that sort of thing. For me, I'm a big believer in cash flow. Like, it's just my brain. I want to see consistent cash flow. If I don't see the cash flow, then I start getting really anxious and really nervous. So, the way that I've run ITS, even up to this point, it's all just like, we need to make cash flow. And I had to have a simple way of just knowing, is my business on or off track? And I read a lot of books on accounting, a bunch of peer groups where we, submit all of our financials and compare each other. And the thing that worked for me was just percentages. And I was like, okay, I know if I got like 100% of the revenue, and I think Robin's talked about this with Mike Michalowicz that wrote Profit First, right? I like that book too. He's like, hey, just lop off. How much profit do you want? 20%? Great. Take 20% off the top. And then how do you run the company with 80%? And I went through those thought exercises like, okay, what do I have to do? But it got me to a point where I knew that, I could spend like, say, 3% on marketing or 3 to 5% on marketing, then 10 to 12% on sales, inside sales, outside sales, commissions, the whole thing. Then maybe another like 15 to 20% on my SG&A type of expenses. Mm-hmm. Then the rest of it had to be just straight COGS for the people doing the work or the products that we had to buy, and the rest had to drop down to profit. So I was able to really look at my P&L and just say, okay, I have this much gross profit, this much SG&A. Of that SG&A, I know I'm spending, X amount of percent on regular office type of things, then X amount of percent on sales and marketing, and the rest should be profit. And if those percentages got off track, then I can just zero in and figure it out. Where I didn't want to sift through my finances every single month with a fine-tooth comb. It's just like not my personality style. Mm-hmm. But I would look at the P&L and say, all right, this month, I take this month versus the last 2 months, and I kind of scan down the P&L and say, all right, do these things seem accurate? Are they like normal? Are they kind of average? Or is something up or down? Like, what does it look like? And based on that, I kind of zero in on it. So that was my real fast way of trying to manage, the finances every month. But at the end, I had to make money. Like that was it. Like, not making money wasn't an option for me. It was just, I couldn't live with myself.
Yeah, that makes sense. So on that front, if you would see those percentages were kind of out of whack in a particular time period, mm-hmm. Are you a guy who'd take a quick action, like whatever that meant? You'd have to, adjust your staffing size or double down on marketing, or like how did that information actually turn into actionable steps you would take?
Yeah, not initially, Rob. No. Like initially, I would let it run out, right? Like I remember this might have been like back in 2006 or 7, maybe right before I found Robin Robbins. Like I let things run out, and I was like losing money, like crossing my fingers and praying, right? Like something happen, please. And then I get all the way down to I have no money. Like I have like my last $20,000. What am I going to do? And then I'd freak out and I'm like, okay, sorry, today's your last day, right? Like that's what I did in the past. I would not do that, at this point, right? Because the business as a whole is more important than trying to, make that, trying to like save myself from having to have that hard conversation. Like that, I was just more nervous about the hard conversation, more nervous about disrupting the person's life than, I was about like keeping the business intact where it was going to, keep running. So, way back when that was, it was a mess. Now, we look at things and say, all right, if things are off track, we're going to dig into it quite a bit. I don't really make rash decisions at all. I really want to know what's going on, what's causing this to happen. Is there anything that we can do before we make that decision? Because, I do have a lot of, care for the people on my staff and our team. Like, I feel like we have a good team. Having a company that can provide for them, their families, allow them to like get married and have children, buy houses, all that kind of stuff, like super important. And if we're, just like terminating people left and right without any kind of regard, it causes a lot of chaos in the culture. And I really want to stay away from that. So usually it's more around, if things are off track, do we have to dial something back a little bit? Or, are there clients that we have to increase prices to? I mean, I could go through that whole conversation too of like how we look at low margin clients. Because way back when, I had clients that were just calling us all the time. It was just constant, right? And I didn't realize I didn't know what clients were profitable or unprofitable. It was like, all right, well, I got this client, I signed them. They're paying us X amount of dollars, per month. Great. We're just going to do all the work and we're just going to keep doing it. And then I got to the point where, we could actually measure that. And I realized, oh my gosh, this person's eating our lunch. Like we are not profitable with this client. It's actually better for us to either have the conversation with the client to say, hey, listen, we're not profitable here. We need to increase your rate, which is preferable. Or if they had to leave, at least it's way less noise for our team to deal with, and it's way less stress. So
yeah, for sure. We have our members run through, that profitability, analysis, mm-hmm. even using kind of rudimentary metrics on it, like just the best metrics you have. And it's incredible how often when you do the analysis, some of your biggest top line dollar customers that you're like, oh, these are my best customers, end up being the ones who are the least profitable because they're just so noisy, so high maintenance, and it's a interesting game from there to figure out what to do exactly. But
That's a tough place to be, honestly. Like, we have a client now that's they're 50, 60,000 a month. Like, that's a sizable client, even with our numbers, like that's sizable, right? We don't want to lose that 50, 60,000 a month. But at the same time, it's like, if we're not profitable, we're not profitable. Like, we gotta just take a look in the mirror and be like, hey, is this really what we want to do with ourselves? Because everybody's grinding every day, and if that continues, then burnout will go up, and then people are unhappy, and we got other problems to deal with.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, going back to that, the part of the reason I asked the question about how you course correct when you see something off in the numbers is I know at the MSP I was at for a decade, I saw the way, like, we got to around 5 million before I left. And in those years, we got to see that we learned about budgeting and we learned about, forecasting. And then it took a little while, though, to learn about how those two things actually should interact, because you have your budget in one way and then you have your forecast in another, and you're like, well, we're not hitting the sales forecast, and it's like, but the rest of it's still going right on. And the ultimate result of that was the EBITDA, the profitability number, would fluctuate tremendously until we started fixing the actual whole story around the EBITDA number. And everything moving to that. So it's interesting. You say, like, in the beginning, it was definitely like you'd see the numbers, but not know or not really want to act in that way. The other thing you brought up that I thought was interesting that I've heard before is that you do a disservice to the other employees if you don't have that hard conversation when you need to let, like, say, this one person, you're going to impact that person's family, but you may impact everyone's families. So thought that kind of came out in that. Let me take it. So we have a couple of missions with this show. We say my first million, and the way we look at that is either my first million in top line revenue or my first million in profit. So if you were to kind of go back to that first decade or some portion of that, when you're thinking about, okay, you're starting out, you're trying to get to that first $1 million in revenue, do you have any particular advice that you would give to the listeners in that bucket who are just, they're just rolling, they're trying to figure things out, and that's their thing. They're like, I want to get to that $1 million.
Yeah, back then, I wish I would have got into marketing sooner. That's the thing, right? And marketing is interesting. You can spend a lot of money on it and it could get you nothing, but then you could spend some money on it and it could actually get some returns. But the one thing is, if you're not doing anything, you're definitely not getting any returns. Like, no one's responding because you're not sending anything out. So I think if I knew how to market, like, originally, I probably could have got to the first million faster, because then, I'd be getting my name out. Because it's really just how many people are in the world, how many people know about me, and then how many people have a problem that I could solve. Like, that's really what it comes down to, right? And just the sooner I can market and the more consistent I can market, the better. I had one guy where we sent paper newsletters out for years and years and years. And then this guy calls me up and he's like, hey, I've been getting your newsletter for the last 2 years straight. So I figured you're still in business. Like, I hate my IT guy. I want to talk to somebody. I'm like, okay. Like 2 years I've been sending this guy a newsletter. And sometimes you just never know, like, who's going to respond and when they're going to respond. It's like, you need to send it at the right time, for them. And I don't know what that is. Yeah. So, through, like, if you do cold calling or, paper newsletters or direct mail or whatever, PPC, right? There's some right time for everybody out there. And we just have to put ourselves out there to be available to capture that opportunity. Yeah,
I completely agree with that. Is there anything in particular that you found more successful in that universe? Because a lot of listeners in that early phase, they're going to think, well, that's great. I can't do all those things. Like, was there anything in particular that you found more effective on a tighter budget or less time?
I think early on for me, because I felt like I was so busy managing the business and trying to just do everything, it was easy to send out some of the direct mail campaigns. Mm-hmm. There was a time where I was like down to the last few dollars, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like make or break for me. I'm just going to grab whatever the campaign was, bought a list off of Info USA, and I just started sending out like 3,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 letters every single month, just to a raw list. Like I didn't call it, I didn't clean it, I didn't do anything to it. I was just like, hope and pray, Hail Mary, send out the emails, or the direct mails rather. So, that was easy because I could just print the stuff, get it put in envelopes, get it sent out. Didn't take a lot of time for me. It does cost money. I mean, it costs money. At the time I was only getting 3 to 5 responses a month, but then that's all I really needed. I only needed to land 1 or 2 clients for it to make sense to keep it going. Now I think the most effective marketing that we do currently are in-person events. And, I read this book a while ago called, it's called Managing the Professional Services Firm. I think it was written in the 90s, but it was written for kind of law firms and CPA firms, but it's really kind of what we do as well, like professional services. We're a knowledge-based kind of company, and they had a list of, top marketing things that worked and all the way down the line, right? And for them, they've said, hey, in-person events where you're a speaker or you're speaking in front of a captive audience, that's going to get you the best return. Writing for publications helps as well. At the time, they didn't do webinars, but the equivalent of a webinar is also really helpful. Some of webinars, we still do webinars all the time. It costs almost nothing, right? It costs almost nothing to do the webinar. You can do it over and over, really hone your skills with it. That gets a decent return for people that want to have, get more information. But from there, sending out direct mail, there's a cost, but I've seen a return. Newsletters, same thing, it works. Pay-per-click advertising definitely works. Then all the way down the line to cold calling. Cold calling still does work as well. It's just takes more effort, right? Yeah. It takes a lot of effort to get, any kind of return out of it. But if you're doing everything else, then even that is still worth doing.
Yeah, we definitely coach on the idea that if you're doing the mailing, do it in conjunction with the cold calling, or any of those things could be in conjunction with the SDR, sales development rep, to enhance that. How about, so then moving to the thought of, okay, so you've moved through that revenue band. You're probably closer to 5 million is when you're looking at more of $1 million in EBITDA or net profit, somewhere there, 5-6 million. Mm-hmm. Any thoughts? We did talk about how you definitely have to develop some kind of leadership team in there. Are there any other big thoughts around how to navigate that period of the business to get to that first $1 million in profit?
I think it comes down to pricing your services properly. Mm-hmm. We underpriced stuff for the longest time. And then, through peer groups and just seeing, hey, oh, you're pricing at that. Can I price it at that? Through experimentation, hey, can I just keep up, increasing my price? There was a time where I just got to the point where when I was selling hardware, I think I was selling hardware at, 15 or 20% markup, which is, 15% margin. And I had a CPA tell me, hey, listen, you're selling this hardware, but you're actually not making any money. You think you're making money, but you're not, because any of that profit, you're not marketing it up enough to pay for your SG&A costs. Mm-hmm. And I didn't realize that. I thought, oh my gosh, you're totally right? I have all these SG&A costs. Say my SG&A is 20 or 25%. If I don't make 20 or 25% margin on the hardware, I'm just losing money. I'm not making any dollars at all. So then I started saying, okay, well, I can keep increasing the price on hardware. How high could I get this? And what can I do to figure out how to get bigger margins on hardware specifically, and then also on the services? Am I pricing it properly by looking at, we use a tool called MSP CFO quite a bit. There's other tools out there that kind of look at profitability, but that one helps us see the agreements that we have and figure out, is this agreement priced properly? What's my actual margin? What do I want to make on the agreement? That's a big one too. It wasn't until I realized I had to have kind of this 1 to 3, 1 to 4 ratio of the cost of the people doing the work and the revenue that I have coming in. So if I'm making $100 in revenue, my cost could really only be $25 to $33 of cost of people. So just understanding that got me to the point of being able to be more and more profitable in the business to get over that $1 million EBITDA.
Yeah, not to get too deep in the weeds, but on that hardware front, a lot of people will say, well, somebody will just go to Amazon or whatever, go to Dell or whatever, and they'll come to you and say, oh, I can get this X amount cheaper. How did you build that into your story of selling that.
Yeah, there's ways, Dell, some other vendors like SonicWall, Meraki, some of those guys, most everybody has a deal registration program where we could say, hey, we want to buy X amount of dollars worth of gear, and then, they'll give you a discount on it. Or this client needs, X amount of dollars of gear, they'll get a bigger discount on it. We got to the point where we would say, all right, we know we're selling this kind of laptop or this kind of firewall or, this kind of network switch. So let's just go buy a bunch of it and just stock it. Even if it's just 10 or 20, right? Whatever the minimum is that we have to hit the deal reg dollar amount, we buy that much, get the extra 10, 15 points off, and then stock it internally. And now we can compete with the Amazons or whoever's online because they're buying it onesie twosie, and we're able to sell it, at the same price. Or sometimes I go back to clients where the client would say, hey, I found this on Amazon. I'm like, hey, great, you found it on Amazon. Listen, we're a local business just like you. Would it be okay if we just put 10% on top of what you found on Amazon? I mean, it's hard for us to compete against Amazon, as you can imagine. And most people were okay with it. They're like, yeah, I get it. Okay, no problem. They just wanted to know like they were getting a somewhat decent price, and they're okay paying 5 or 10% more, especially to work with a local business. So, a lot of times we could even compete with Amazon in that way.
Yeah, that's great advice in there. Would you a lot of the paths, the maturing path seems to also revolve around getting a better and better handle on your numbers. Was that something you would recommend digging into earlier in the business? Like if you could relive that part, is that, because it seems like, I know it's easy to say in retrospect because, you were wearing a million hats and all, but if somebody was trying to put that as a relative importance, would it rank high early? Or
I think it's helpful to understand what KPIs drive what results. So like understanding leading KPIs, like things that, okay, if this is happening right now, it's going to lead to some kind of result, whether that result's good or bad, whatever it is, right? It's kind of positive or negative consequence. So trying to identify the KPIs that drive the results you're looking for is super important. And even now, we have KPIs on top of KPIs. Seriously, like hundreds of them all across all these different departments and whatnot. And we're still coming up with KPIs. We're like, you know what? We found this one little thing that we didn't like. It was, we felt like, okay, this could be better. What do we need to know? What do we have to measure to make sure that we're on track to fixing whatever that problem is? So I think it's a tough one, especially, I'll just speak my own experience. I didn't know anything about KPIs. I didn't know anything about anything when I started the business. And then as I read more books and, fumbled around with it, I was like, okay, I need to measure this thing to make sure this other thing either happens or doesn't happen, whichever way I wanted to go about it, right? I picked up along the way the whole managing by exception kind of philosophy, where it's just managed down to zero. We want to manage everything to zero. So a lot of KPIs, we want to just measure to zero. Make sure, hey, this bad thing isn't happening. If this bad thing happens, okay, let's dig into it. Let's figure out why. Do we have to, change a system or a process, and then, try to get back down to zero again. So sometimes I've seen people measure KPIs where it's just informational. Like it's just like, all right, I'm measuring a number, but I'm not really doing anything with the number. So for me, the best KPIs are ones that we can take action on, because I want to know if the KPI is up or down, what am I going to do? And I should have some kind of action I could take. Like if it's up, I'm going to do this. If it's down, I'm going to do that. And if I don't have that, then I feel like the KPI is just a waste of time.
Yeah, so you're saying that as opposed to the trailing indicators where you're looking, it's more the rearview mirror, which are numbers. They're good numbers to know, of course, but you can't affect them because it's like, well, yeah, we missed that goal, or this thing didn't happen, as opposed to, geez, yeah, we need to put more leads in the hopper, or this lever is going to make this result. Is that kind of what you're focused on more?
Yeah, exactly. It's especially with financials. Financials are such a lagging indicator that by the time the financials are, your books are all put together, like, say you reconcile the prior month, like we're right in the beginning of May, and, our books are not reconciled for April yet. We did March maybe a couple weeks ago, like great, but now I'm still like 2 or 3 weeks into the next month before I even understand what the prior month looked like. And if I had to make a change, now I'm just already behind. So it's really tough to manage just on the financials. But looking at the financials, then we can kind of get some information and say, okay, what KPIs do we need to put in place to make sure our financials look better next time, even though we're kind of lagging behind maybe 6 to 8 weeks at a time.
Yeah, that right. The leading indicators. Hey, shifting gears a little bit, you mentioned in the PE backing that culture match was important. So that's on this higher end of or later end of the story. How important do you feel building the company culture is just in general, and where in your journey did that come in and become an important thing, if you believe that's an important?
Yeah, I think culture is super important. Really, culture is like the glue. So it's the behavior, right? Like, how do people behave when they show up to work or to work together? And if we don't, there's always a culture. That's the one thing. Like, every group of people has a culture, whether it's identified or not identified. They have something. But the question is it the culture we want? Is it the culture that's going to allow us to succeed? And if it's one that we want to allow us to succeed, we need to identify it and make sure we're super clear about it, because then we can start hiring and firing and having conversations around encouraging people to behave a certain way, right? So if we can do all that, then everything kind of comes together. Really, we're just happier, honestly. I want to show up and just be happy. I want everyone to be happy at ITS. I want to be happy, right? We're all living our lives. We shouldn't have to go to work miserable and just deal with stuff that, we don't want to deal with every day. Now, of course, I think this business is all about kind of dealing with problems. We're just problem solvers in general, right? And I love solving problems too, but it's this balance of solving problems, but not, not making our lives miserable while we're doing it. And then really feeling like we're part of something that's, kind of delivering an experience that's good for the client. The culture fit with the private equity guys, I think it's important if, private equity guys come in, because they have a lot of leverage. They have a lot of leverage once you bring them in. They own a part of the company. We're reporting to the board. We're putting presentations together, all this stuff. And we're working with them on a regular basis. It's if I'm going to hire somebody, do I see myself wanting to work with this person every day? Do I want to go out to lunch with this person, out to dinner with this person? If I can't say that I want to do that, then it's not a good fit, right? Mm-hmm. It's just okay, we're two different personality styles. We should just go our separate way.
Yeah. So I know it's a challenge enough if you're a 20, 30, 40 person company to kind of be a guardian of that culture and make sure that thrives the way you want it to. I imagine the challenges are much harder as you get bigger and bigger. How do you handle that at the size you are now?
Yeah, one thing we did, I don't know how long ago this was. It was a while ago. I think I read Rockefeller Habits before, Bernard Harnish wrote Scaling Up. He was big on culture and core values and things. And he was like, okay, you got to get your core values down. And this is a big thing with EOS too. We're a big EOS traction shop. Yep. And so we created our core values. I think we came up with 10. I was like, all right, we're feeling really good about these 10. And then one day I walked in and we were doing a daily huddle similar to what Vern Harnish recommended. And I said, hey guys, who could name off all 10 core values? If you can name off 10 core values, I'll give you $100. And nobody could do it. I was like, okay, we got a problem here, right?
Yeah. So
then I came in the next day. And I was like, all right, I got $20 a day. Who could do it? Nobody could do it. They got close, 7, 8, or whatever, right? Then the next day I was like, I don't have any money, but who could do it, right? And then people were like, oh, I can do it. I realized that 10 core values was too many. It was just too many for people to remember and really internalize. So we cut it down to 5, and people could remember the 5. And then it still seemed like even with those 5, there's a couple that were a little bit like the other ones. So we cut it down even further to just 3. And in my mind, simplifying is better. So I'm always trying to simplify everything I do, because I feel like if I have less complexity, there's just less things for people to remember to do, less things that could break. So I'm trying to simplify as much as possible. So we got our core values down to just 3 core values. And to try to get people to remember them, especially as we grew in size, part of our daily huddle was to tell a core value story. So at the end of the huddle, it was like, hey, who has a core value story? Somebody on the team that wants to encourage or exemplify someone else, by telling a story about what they did or what happened to them and how they reacted and how they live the core value, one of the 3 core values, that helps just people remember them over and over and over. And until I did that, really nobody could remember the core values 100%.
Yeah, I think that's great, because it's not just like a way to remember it. It's a way to keep it relevant and infused into the culture. They're not just kind of words on a wall somewhere that even if you did remember them, it's like, yeah, whatever, those things. Yeah, excellent.
Right.
And I think that's tremendous. Hey, you mentioned somewhere in here when you're talking about that growth or trying to hit 25% or doubling or even getting to where you are now, the mindset around it, or could you be a person who could be a CEO of a 10 or a 20 or $30 million company? Do you find mindset shift at some point impacted your ability to grow? Did you have any moments like that where you said, okay, I'm not just this, my mind's open from whatever mentorship or learning, or I don't know what it would have been in your life?
Yeah, I mean, I learned a lot by reading a ton of books, listening to a lot of audiobooks, and just being part of a ton of different peer groups, just learning from other people. But I think I got to the point where I realized someone else has already done this, so why can't I do it? Right? Why can't I? Like, what is stopping me? And then I would think about it, and I'm like, oh well, I never even went to college. I did one class in college, right? When I was in high school, actually. And I'm like, okay, I don't have a college degree. Never went to college. Then I look out into the landscape of people that have, are even way more successful than I am. Tons of people haven't gone to college. And I go, okay, well, that's not a limiting factor, right? Like, it's all in my mind. It's just like, what are these barriers there's mental barriers that I'm putting up for no reason. And then could I get rid of them somehow? Like, what would I need to know, or how would I need to feel, to feel more confident in what I'm doing? And so I just started thinking about, I never got an MBA. I was curious about MBA. Let me just go read a bunch of books on MBAs. Let me just go see what that's all about. And as I went through all of that, I'm like, okay, some stuff I'm already doing, cool. I picked up some new ideas, some new knowledge, great. And I just started building more and more confidence. And then really it's just trial and error. I mean, I love one of these quotes. It goes like, says something along the lines of mistakes are what we call our experience. And that's literally like me to a T, right? All the experience I have is through a lot of mistakes, tons. So it's like, let me try this, fail at it, great. Let me get let me debrief, get the feedback, try to understand what happened, and then just try again and try again and try again. One of our core values is have an open mind. And we talk about how nice it is to hear positive feedback. Of course, everybody loves that, but it's the negative feedback that actually lets us grow. I mean, that's the stuff that will identify where are we short, and then what do we need to do to get better.
Yeah. So you think in general, people kind of put a lid on themselves in some ways?
I don't know about everybody, but I know I did. Absolutely. Yeah, I did. And I had to figure out how to remove it. And I think there's also imposter syndrome is, for me, that was a thing for sure. It was like, could I do this? Why me? Like, I don't understand. And at some point it's like, I just had to get to the realization that I just thought like get to work, right? Like, someone's doing this already. How are they doing it? Why can't I do it? There's no reason why I can't do it. So let's just get started.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I think I read on your site or in your bio that you're like a family first kind of guy. How did you through this? I mean, there's a big journey here, so maybe you take it in a couple of segments. But how are you able to juggle that work-life balance? I mean, from hustle in the beginning to like now running this kind of empire, this massive, entity.
It's tough. I mean, when my kids were little, it was really tough. I mean, my wife, stay-at-home mom, that helped a lot, right? She was able to take care of the kids while I was, out there just working and traveling and doing all these peer groups and whatnot. I, personally, we had a lot of challenges in our marriage for a long time where she's dealing with the kids. And I think as a stay-at-home parent, you're never off. You're always on the job, right? And these kids always need some kind of attention of some sort. So it builds up, and it can be a lot. And especially if someone stay at home and they're not really getting out there and in the community, and they're not like seeing different people. And at least for me, like I was able to fly all over the country, meeting with different peer groups and going to different conferences, and kind of expanding my mind and working with a lot of different clients. Where my wife was the opposite effect, and that put a lot of stress on our marriage at the time. And I had to dig deep and figure out, okay, what part of the problem am I contributing to? And that was once I realized that, okay, I'm part of this problem. What part am I a part of? And then like, what can I do to make things better? Like how do I have to change my own behavior? That's where things got a lot better. And then as the kids got older, that helped too, because they're not so needy.
Yeah, I think that's super insightful. I mean, I'm in a similar situation where my wife worked from home, and we don't really have a lot of family around and all that. It was for the first years especially. Like she loved being a mom and all that, but almost no outlet. And I think that's a really key point, though, that self-analysis and the ability to do that and then try to take an action to help based on that information, I think is great advice. You've mentioned multiple times now in this conversation peer groups. I mean, it's jumped off the page to me. What's been the significance or the role of peer groups throughout your career? It sounds like you've drawn some great inspiration. I'd love to hear you just dig in on that a little bit.
It's just massive. I mean, it's massive. I spent a lot of time reading and listening to a lot of books and going through different coaching programs and whatnot. But like in peer groups, everybody's in the same boat. I mean, we're all, showing up to fight the fight. And, if I have one idea that is really unique, and I share that with somebody else, and then all of a sudden they can run with it and get some value out of it, and they're sharing ideas that they came up with, and I can get some value out of it. I mean, it just saves so much time, Because I realized a long time ago, before I was in peer groups, I was trying to figure things out myself. And I thought, all right, I'm like a pretty smart guy. Like I can figure all this stuff out. There's no way, right? Like it just takes way too long. We just don't have enough time to even like think through all the problems, much less come up with all the solutions. But then when I'm part of a peer group and someone says, hey, I just created this hardware as a service idea. Randy Hall, I think, was the one that they came up with that like years and years and years ago. Yeah. I'm like, oh my God, mind blown. Like that's a brilliant idea. We could totally do that, right? It's like stuff like that. Like how long would it have taken me to get to that idea? I have no idea. But just the fact that I was in a group and someone shared that bit of knowledge, that helped me tremendously. So I can't say enough about peer groups. They really work for me. I think also in peer groups, it's about how much you share, like how vulnerable are you? How much can you share with other people? How open are you to listening, to new ideas and just like new ways of doing things? Like how curious can I be? All of that is super important too, because I've seen some people in peer groups where they're part of the group and then eventually they drop out, and it feels like they're not open to sharing as much as maybe other people are. And for me, I'm just like, hey, full transparency. Like this is what's going on. I want to learn from people. I'm happy to share what I've done and what I've learned that's worked. And with that kind of mindset, like I've got a lot of success out of it.
Yeah, fantastic. What would you say your biggest success is so far in all of this?
Oh man, it's such a big question, right? Yeah. It's like, my son went through his first year of college like this year was his first year. He's going to wrap it up here in the next couple weeks. That's cool to like see him grow through that. My younger son is, junior high school. So I think, I don't know. I came from a broken house where, my parents divorced when I was 2. And, I lived with a stepdad. It was really chaotic. And, I ended up moving out of my house when I was 16. And I was like, man, if I have kids, like this is not going to happen. Like this is not going to happen to them. I'm going to figure out how to keep my parents, keep my marriage together so that they can have their parents together and give them a life that was better than mine. I think that's a huge success for me, like personally, of just being able to figure out that's like real life stuff for me. Like growing the business is also tough and it's tons of challenges and everything else. But at the end of the day, it's like, what do we have, right? We have our health, we got our family around us. I mean, we have our happiness, our livelihood. Like there's that. Like I feel like that's a big success for me, is just being able to raise these kids in a household that stayed together, worked through the problems. They're having some success. That was huge. On the business side, obviously, I never ever thought we were going to be a $50 million a year company. Like that's crazy. It's crazy. Much less, go into the mergers and acquisitions, road, and be able to partner or buy companies and get private equity. Like it's mind boggling to me still. So, I think the two of those things were probably the biggest successes that I've had so far.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, I know this one's a little played out kind of question, but I still like it. If you go back in time and tell your younger self some piece of advice about how to navigate all this, would anything come to mind that you tell that guy?
I feel like I'm talking to that guy all the time, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like in the core, I'm still my younger self somehow.
Yeah.
Marketing quicker. I should have done that. I should have marketed quicker, understood marketing and sales. I spent a lot of time learning both of those things, and that brought so much value over the years. That would have been great. There's a lot of talk of M&A and buying companies and all that. I think it's important to have that leadership team. I don't know that I would change that per se, but if I could have started that quicker, I just would have had a faster trajectory. I'm still happy with where we're at. I don't know. It's a tough question. Like, what would I do differently? I don't know. It's like all the decisions that I made got me to here.
Yeah. Right.
And it's pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, I can tell you, I wish I didn't make some massive decisions and lost tons and tons of money. There's those things, right? I would 100% not like to do that. But what are you going to do, right? It's part of the journey. It's part of the story. So I can't complain too much about it.
Hey, on that leadership team, I know we talked about this a little before. I wanted to ask, how did you get to the point where you could kind of let go of the rope, bringing those people on and trust them to take over key functions in your business? Was this a hard thing for you, or?
Yeah, I still feel like a control freak in a lot of ways. Having KPIs set up helped a lot of just hey, these are your KPIs, you're responsible for these, you're accountable to these things. If all those KPIs started looking good, I could just back off. And also realizing that if I try to control everything, I'm just putting, kind of a lid on how much we can grow, because I'm only one person, right? So I have to allow people to just grow with what they have, and they got to make their own mistakes too. That was the other thing. I made so many mistakes. It's I can't expect people to be perfect. So if they make a mistake, it's okay, no problem. You made this mistake. Hey, let's talk through it. Let's figure out what we should have done. If someone keeps making the same mistake over and over, then I'm like, okay, this isn't the right person, right? I get it, but I'm okay with people making mistakes. It's just part of life in general.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's great insight, because you said about yourself that you learned so much from that those are the critical points that taught you things. So really, how could you expect that, someone else is just going to get it all right, period? I mean, it's interesting. What's kind of next on your next roadmap here for ITS?
Yeah, ITS is at 100 million in revenue, 100 million. We're at 50 million in revenue. So the next big goal is for us to get to 100 million. It's funny because that's on my mind, right? It's we need to get to 100 million and 15 to 20 million in EBITDA. That's the big thing. Along the way, building out a cybersecurity team, which we've done quite a bit of over the last 2-3 years. Having a 24/7 security operations center was a big deal. Bringing out or building a compliance arm to ITS as well. So just adding on to that, we're mostly West Coast based. Mm-hmm. So kind of getting more into that mountain to Midwest region, I think is big for us as well. So we have to grow another 50 million. Like I said, I can't believe we're at 50 million, right? And we went from, I think it was in 2021, we were at 20 million. So now to be at 50 million,
Yeah.
3-4 years later is crazy. And now to go to like from 50 to 100, that'll be another big jump. So we got a lot of work ahead of us for sure.
It sounds like monopoly money kind of at some point. You're like, another 50, and just, you throw it on there. Yeah. Tom, it's been really excellent, talking with you today. I think our listeners, you actually gave a ton of great advice and wisdom in there. And I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Rob. Appreciate it. Hopefully it was helpful.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you so much.